juggled around, kind of be tossed around and asked the Postal Service, what do you want to do? Do you feel like there's too much risk? Or, I think it'll be a little bit political, but I do appreciate you saying that. And it's very likely for a lot of it that they may not have to do this to change and have mail in one time or one location, sorry. But it may happen for part of it, so we put it in there. Does that make any sense?
That does make sense, and thank you for that. Also, I would like to ask, you mentioned if there were problems with the water for these homes up here, that you would get in touch with us, and that could, I mean, if there are problems, that could mean a lot of different things, and including, worst case scenario, maybe not having, you know, food grade water and sanitation. So, what are the plans for that?
So basically what happens is the contractor, first thing before any of the water line is put in, is required to give each person temporary water. And that includes the SOB building. That includes any water that comes off of this line that comes from Main Street, up 3rd
Mm-hmm.
Street, and onto Dixon. So each house will be fed sometimes backwards through maybe a hose bib or some other fashion. And
Mm-hmm.
then that's generally a really short shut off, like an hour for each person. I mean, it may be a couple hours, but it's a short section that you would not have water. The contractor would contact you, or the inspection firm would contact you and let you know that tomorrow at some point in time you might be out of water for an hour. And then it would be run in, you'd be still getting water that is city water, clean water. There's no chance of contamination or anything else. It'd just be running it basically backwards. And that
Mm-hmm.
would have you, that would give you water until the water line has gone through the whole process of being laid in the ground, uh, sanitized, pressure tested. And when the engineer thinks that it's ready, then they will then have another hookup, which would require a short period where you'd be out of water again. And then they would hook up and you would have it. So the plan is that no one would be out of water for very long, and you would know ahead of time. So even if you just a couple buckets of water for the toilet or the sink, they're not going to plan these things around dinner time or um,
Mm-hmm.
the 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m. showers. It's going to be well known when these things happen. But unfortunately, to get a new line of water, then there just has to be some short shutoffs. And we try to just make that as simple for everyone as possible. But it does um, it does create a few short shutdowns.
Thank you very much.
Did I answer? I probably answered it and talked for an extra 5 minutes, huh? Or did I not answer?
You did.
Okay, good.
Um, Shosh has a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shosh, you can unmute.
Yeah, it's Shosh. It's short for
Shosh.
Shosh. But yeah,
Oh, sorry.
yeah. Hi. I guess I can be heard. So,
Yes.
yeah. I just piggybacking on Tony's question. In the event that something might go wrong and it's not as smooth as you just described it, what kind of contingency plans are there for houses in those situations? What happens?
Right. So I have been part of, I don't know, maybe 100 CBJ projects, maybe not that many. And I've run into a lot of different situations. I would say that in the case that I'm trying to think of a case where water had to be shut off without notice. I think once on Foster, then a valve was broken and we had to turn the water off. And we dug that up, fixed it, and it was a 3 or 4 hour shutdown. So the contingency plan is that the contractor doesn't go home and leave you without water. They're there until they fix it. So your system here is not a looping system. It is dead-ended at the end of Dixon. So the only way that you get water is through Main Street. And if the water breaks somewhere between Main Street and the end of Dixon, then the line needs to be repaired before you can have water. Now, the contractors are professionals and these things cost them money. So they avoid them at all costs. And it is pretty rare that you see something happen that would be unexpected. Although with that being said, there's a reason this project is happening. And one of those reasons is that your water line is in really poor shape. So your water line needs to be replaced, and it needs to be replaced fairly soon. So, and I don't mean soon as in tomorrow, I just mean soon in relative terms of, it's only probably got another 5-year life on it. So it is, I have seen before, when we strip off the asphalt and just that little extra pressure of holding it down makes it so that the water line pops in multiple spots. And a lot of those fixes can be done just right on the spot, and you would not even know about it unless you were out there looking. And if it was a bigger break, then we've got sleeves and different mechanisms that can repair things in a relatively short order. So at no point can I see any reason why someone would be out of water for more than hours. Definitely not days, definitely not more than 1 day. Worst case scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Okay, so I will continue down the road. These are just pretty boring. This just gives the contractor some guidance on how I want him to, or how I want the company to place rock depending on our needs. This is where our catch basins are going to be. This is where our sewer services are going to be. This is where our water services are going to be. And some new signs. Now, I have to say that I've had a really, really difficult time determining where the water and the sewer services are for each of the locations. And as we get here moving forward, if you do know where your water and sewer is and it's not shown correctly, I would appreciate you raising your hand and letting me know, because we spent a total of about a week worth of time on site trying to find where they all are. And this street is definitely one of the older streets in Juneau that have not been repaired. So there is not a lot of record from the state owns the property. They don't have any records. So then of course CBJ wouldn't either.
Bob Sylvester has a question for you.
Yep,
Justin?
go ahead, Bob. You're muted, Bob.
You can unmute, Bob.
Yeah, just a quick question on buckets in the house for emergency water. Did you say you were going to supply those?
No, I did not.
So if we're gonna have like emergency water, we just need to get a couple of 5-gallon buckets and fill them up at some point?
Bob, I don't think you're going to need any emergency buckets, but if it makes you feel better, or you have some special needs that are going to require water a little more often than a couple hour shut off, then by all means, I would fill up a couple, or just if you feel like filling up your water bottles or whatever it is.
Sure.
Generally, like I said, a water shutoff does not normally take very long. And knock on wood, I've not seen anything that would prevent a long shutoff. So you're more than welcome to put water in buckets. And I did say that before, just because sometimes it makes it easier because then you can still flush the toilet and those type things. If you were interested in that, if it was while you were away at work, then you may not even notice that the water was off. I do want to say one thing, and a lot of people do get this. When the water is shut off and then turned back on, it is pretty rare that you're not going to see some sort of bubbles in the water, even sometimes a discoloration. A lot of those connections between the water system and your own personal system collect just little pieces of, may it be copper or cast iron or ductile iron or whatever the systems are installed with. So just running the cold water for a period of 2 to 5 minutes will get rid of any discoloration. The discoloration isn't harmful. It's just a discoloring of the pipe, and when it's turned on and off, the pressure changes and the inside coating just changes the color of the water. So this is the start of the project. This is Main Street here, 3rd Street. This is the spam cam, the AOB, and the SOB, where we're going to take off where they left off on Main Street and repave the street. We're going to take off where they left on the Main Street job and run the sewer up to here, which is where it is now. We're going to take off with a new water line where they took off from the Main Street job and run it up. We'll be able to see your homes here when we turn to the next page, but a little bit of storm added in, a new sidewalk on both sides, a new hand railing on this side of the road. There's going to be some tree trimming there's some alders on this hill that are hanging over the roadway. Just need to make sure that all emergency vehicles can get through. So there'll be some tree trimming. And as I walked that today, it looks like there's been tree trimming over the years, every once in a while, at least that's what it looked like from the trees. So they'll continue some tree trimming they just like to keep the limbs out of the street. And if any of the trees look like they're going to fall and hurt someone onto the street, then that would be another reason why we would take one out. So looks like there's quite enough trees to go around there, though. And this is where it starts for, I believe this is a fourplex. Not positive. It's a 3 or 4-plex. And then our first house up on the hillside. Basically, we have our sidewalk now running through, crossing the legislative parking lot. And it'll be a depressed curb, so people will be able to drive in and drive out. Again, the water line is going to continue down here with a new hydrant. As you can see, there's water services coming in, plan to come in, and new sewer services that are crossing the road. Sewer services will be done for the section that is under the street. Yeah, I think that's all I'll say for that. But specifically, if you are in one of these 4 homes, if your water service comes in some other location than here, and you know where it is, then I would appreciate you sharing. I don't see anyone raising their hand. So you're just like me, I don't know where it is either. We're going to put in a bid item for the contractor to locate the water and sewer on Dixon Street before they get started. So they'll be potholing with an excavator, verifying locations of items before they get started, which is always an important backup plan. So we all know what the story is before we do any work to accomplish it. So basically the road is going to be at a similar grade than it was before. It's just going to be new. This right here is currently a ramp that's made from wood, and then it takes a corner here and goes up. We're proposing making that into concrete, and the obvious benefits of concrete is it's going to last 100 years. And right now we're having a lot of sloughing, and the soils from underneath are undermining the wood platforms that are holding the structure up. Also, if you notice here, there is a curb to collect water now that's running along the top of this, or basically the top of Dixon, along with the existing collection of water system that's running on the lower side. So we'll have water being collected on both the top and the bottom. It also helps vegetation from encroaching on a street that's different than any other street in Juneau, where the width doesn't stay consistent and it varies throughout. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to fix that without taking away parking locations and removing AEL&P poles and a lot of other things that were just unmovable. So the configuration of Dixon Street will stay pretty consistent with what it was before. Just on the upper end, there will be a valley gutter that will collect water and deposit it around the corner. This valley gutter that I was speaking of is right here. Water will be collected into it, and it'll drain down here to an existing drain and then be sent out to what's down here is the Capital Transit Center. So again, we have a 3-valve cluster up here. Assuming what we've traced is accurate, then the new water line will be here instead of your valve. Like if you were to live in what is that? I'm sorry, 126 or 128. Then you'll now have your water valve will be here. Same for 124, your water valve will be here instead of up here on the hill. And then if you were in 125, then your water valve will be approximately in the same location. Again, it'll be a little bit of grading in the gravel driveways that are up on the hillside, and we'll fix that as needed. The contractor, as they put in new water and sewer services, will put everything back as best they can, and what they can't put back, they will make look nicer. So that includes topsoiling and seeding and whatever's required to clean up the mess that they make from putting it in, including grading the hillside, so there's a nice smooth transition between the roadway and the property lines. Again, you'll see some tree removal in this area. There's quite a bit hanging over this corner currently, and one tree that is hanging on for its dear life here in the corner. I think it's here in the corner. It looks like it's going to fall on someone at any moment. Don't plan on taking any large trees out. Most of these, I think, of the trees that I've specified, I think they're all alders, and alders, as we know, just kind of grow like weeds and just need to be trimmed back a little bit. Now we're going to get into a little bit of more, just some more boring stuff. Basically, these are just dictating how the curves are going to be done, the percentage of slopes and grades for the contractor to construct the project as I want him or her to. Guessing nothing real exciting there. These are the details. There's going to be a new fire hydrant. These are what our water valves are going to look like. We're putting in some under drain protection, which basically pulls the water out from the street and puts it into the storm system. So you'll have less water running underneath, which just helps everyone in general. It's just some sections on the stairs down on 3rd Street. This is a section that's going to change a tiny bit. But this is what the handrail on 3rd Street looks like now. This height is going to change just a little bit. I believe I'm changing it to a 6 feet instead of an 8-foot span. But anyways, it basically shows you a handrail that is there now and will be placed in place. As you can see, it's perpendicular to the sidewalk, not straight up and down. And that was on purpose. Again, some small details. There'll be a edge curb on the back of sidewalk, which is not there now. So it'll be easier for snow removal. The blades and the snow plows will be able to have a edge here that they can remove against. And right now, that edge, if you watch 3rd Street, just gets closer and closer to the roadway each year as the forest tries to overtake the sidewalk. So this is going to keep consistent width by putting this bulb up here and keep us with a 5-foot sidewalk throughout. This is a cross section of the ramp that is going to be put in as we looked on for the second house that was on the uphill side of Dixon. Again, a wall here. This is a handrail that's going to go right here on the front of it. This is a profile. If you know what a profile is, it's basically looking at side view. Here's the bottom of footing. Basically, it's gonna be not this wall here isn't going to be very tall until we get farther on and almost at the end where we turn at the hydrant. So, and then here's just an overhead view of that ramp a little closer as it takes a turn. And the concrete will stop after the first entrance. Or that's the plan currently. And then any work will be done here will most likely require some replacement of the wood that's down there currently. West 3rd and Dixon is a very
Justin,
interesting. Yes.
Bob Sylvester has another question.
Okay, go ahead, Bob. You're muted, Bob.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm curious about along the wall, are we going to be able to maintain the number of parking spots we have?
Yeah, so what you can see here is this line here. Well, I'm gonna have to go back to a previous page, sorry. Okay, so see this dotted line here?
Okay.
That is where the road, that's where the road is now.
Mhm.
And then it continues on here. So then this right there is where the road will be now. So it actually gives you about 2 more feet, 1 to 2 feet.
Okay.
In this particular case, this one will be a little more. In this case, it'll be 2 feet. In this case, it'll be 3 feet. So we tried to use as much as we could and, you know, not take away any existing features that, you know, I mean, downtowns, parking's important. So obviously everyone's going to need a place to park. And this does not change that. So if we look at, Bob, if we look at this little profile here for, whoops, the wall, see, this is the curb there. You'll be able to park right up against it, just as you do now. It's just the existing right now is right here, and now it's going to be back a little farther. Answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we've got a kind of special situation here. All these houses are built on bedrock. That just means that we're going to have to put in some special water pipe, some Arctic insulated water pipe. Unless anyone really wants to know about that, I'll stop talking there. It's not that exciting for anyone except me. These are just profile views, basically what's happening along the job. Grade breaks, pipes.
Hey, Justin, will you need to go into the houses in the process of completing this project?
No, I do not believe so. The only time that is a possibility is when the contractor needs to hook up temporary water. And if they can't find a location outside, like a hose bib that would work, then sometimes, usually rarely, they would have to find an alternative route. I don't see that often. And if you're concerned about someone coming in the house, then you know, we can just make whatever arrangements is going to be needed to feel safe or or whatever the concern is for them being in there.
Just, I'm assuming we would just be notified. Other than that, I don't have
Of
any.
course,
Yeah,
yes,
no concern.
yeah. No one's allowed in your home. You own your home. I mean, somebody owns your home, whether you rent or own, and no one is allowed in your home without your permission. And it's not any different here. Unless there's an emergency, the contractors in town are usually really good at making advance notice of just letting you know daily, this is what's going on. A couple days, I may need to go in and shut off your water underneath your house, so that doesn't backflow. That would probably be the only reason that I could see them needing access to your crawl space, was if they needed to shut off the water so when they feed it in backwards, it doesn't escape out the front. But, so that's basically the presentation of the plan sheets that I've done. Hopefully that kind of answers most questions, but if there's anything additional, then I could go as long
Bob.
as you have questions.
Bob Sylvester has another question.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
All right. I just had a question about hookups.
Mhm.
Are hooking up the new water or taking off the old pipe? How's that going to work? So I'm concerned about the age of the pipe in the house as well as out in the street.
Sure. It's old pipe, which is why it's getting replaced. So, do I understand it correctly that the state of Alaska owns these homes and then these homes are rented?
Yes.
Okay. So basically the water line is going to be just like on any CBJ property. Then CBJ is responsible for the water line up to the property line and where your valve is. So CBJ will replace the water line in the street, and they'll replace the service up to the property line. And then the homeowner is responsible for the water line and the piping on the private property. So that's the same way throughout the borough, and would be the same here. If any house has a old service or old piping, then it would be just like electrical, and someone would have to come fix it. No, that isn't always positive news, but it is unfortunate that the city just doesn't do work inside private property. It's just not there.
So will you leave it, or will you leave it hooked up if there's a problem, or what?
Oh, I understand your question. I'm sorry, I probably didn't address it. So no contractor with any conscience is going to notice a problem, bury it, and then not tell you about it, or bury it so that you can't fix it. So there is a construction company that will be out doing the work. There'll also be an engineer inspector that will be watching the construction company to make sure that they do the things that they're required to do. I often work out inspecting my own jobs. This particular job, I have no idea whether I will be out there or whether it'll be somebody different, but there will be an engineer out there that is watching for those exact things. And it just kind of keeps everyone honest, and it also documents any issues takes lots of pictures. So if anything needs to be put together at a later point, then that can be done. But if at the connection, then if they cannot get a good connection with your existing water line, then they will continue to work on that until there is a good connection. And that includes chasing it back. We set the valves a little bit away from the property line so that if there is any issue and they need to chase it back 6 inches, a foot, then they can still put in a water line, get a good connection, but we are not going to bury one that's leaking or that is not put in correctly. Does that answer the question? I'm all over the place, but
Since the state owns the property, I'm wondering if we should somehow, I don't know how to approach it, basically, because we won't be the ones that are, well, actually, I think there is a management group here. But anyway, and since the properties are quite old, there's more of a probability that there might be a problem somewhere along the way. With the existing old pipes in the houses, from the houses. So anyway, maybe in the future, some kind of a discussion could go on between the property management and the city to talk about that.
I think in my experience, I've seen as the street is being done, it is the perfect time for any upgrades. I can't speak for John, but I can say that usually the city does not involve themselves on private property concerns. But it is very common that the property owners do upgrades as new things are happening in the street, sometimes even hiring the same contractor that's working on the street, or often doing that because it's cheaper, they're already there, they can just continue the work. But again, that will not be included in my design, and that won't be something that the city is going to pay for.
Yeah, I'm just curious about all that. Thanks.
Absolutely. I wish I could help you more on that aspect of it, but this is a little different because these properties are owned by the state of Alaska. Usually, I would just be talking to a homeowner, and the state of Alaska is a little bigger entity and harder to talk about.
Let me just butt in here, Justin, and say,
Yeah, go ahead.
on the city's behalf, normally anything that's done on something other than city property is handled by the residents, whether it's a private company or if it's a private property, it's usually up to the resident. With the state of Alaska owning it, I don't know. Maybe there is some kind of organization that you guys have talked to before about things like this, and I would recommend that you maybe get in touch with them. And if they want to give me a call or Justin a call, and we can coordinate something, that'd be fine too.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
It looks like we have a question from in the question and answer.
Yes, Ronald Simonson.
That's Roald. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Yeah, Roald, not Ronald.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question about kind of the treacherousness of 3rd Street.
Mhm.
Anybody on the hill that kind of walks off our hill, Telephone Hill, but also anybody that parks in the parking lot, the legislative parking lot, and they're sort of going to the Capitol. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm trying to describe this so you can sort of picture it in your head. But say you leave the parking lot and then you head down around, the corner there at 3rd and Dixon. That's where the handrail starts. And
Right.
then what you normally want to do, I mean, the easiest thing to do is to head across 3rd Street there and go through that area between the SOB and the AOB.
Sure.
And then you walk there to 4th, and then you're on the corner of 4th and Main and go to the Capitol building. And that little crossing from one side of the street to that area there is, it's just ridiculous. It's nobody's fault. It's just the weather's fault. It's just ice
Yeah.
and snow.
Right.
And it's just the slant is exactly, terrible. And if you sort of walk down and try to head up, and I've actually done it on my hands and knees sometimes, and have fallen. And I was just, I don't know if there's anything that can be done to make that crossing less perilous. Otherwise the solution, if you just want to avoid it all, is you walk down 3rd all the way to Main Street and then walk up Main Street. But even walking down 3rd, that sidewalk, there's a stretch there between the Spam Cam building and the railing. That's a gap. There's a way to get into, I don't know, that's the energy unit there or something. But you got about 20 feet of where you're kind of on your own without a railing. So even that's not a perfect solution. And one thing that I was thinking of is, it's actually, you kind of try to do it, if you do a lot of experience on this thing, is you, instead of going down on the sidewalk part, the railing part of 3rd Street on that side, on the corner, if you stay above that on the other side of the street, on the sort of SOB side of the street rather than the parking lot side of the street for that corner, and you kind of go down and you sort of post hole through snow a little bit, you just get a little better footing, and then you turn left there right at the SOB where the dumpster is. Is everything I'm saying clear to you?
Totally
But
clear.
Yeah.
I've walked up and down this about 40 or 50 times. I've done exactly what you've said.
And
Unfortunately, but I'll let you finish. But yeah.
Let me just finish one. And I was wondering if a railing could be put on that other side, the SOB.
Like here is what you're asking, right?
Let me see if I can see what you're talking about. Yep.
Here's Main Street up 3rd.
Yep.
Talking about here.
Yep.
You're talking
Or a
about
rope
putting
line.
a rope line,
Yes. Or a chain.
something. I don't know. I would have to look at that and see if there's anything possible.
When you climb mountains, in Zion, they have those pipes and chains, and you go up there like that, and something like that would even be nice.
Well, we will have to get back to you on that. I can say that that's not something that I've looked into.
Yeah.
I can say that I've extended the railing all the way around the corner for coming up and down 3rd Street. And I believe the gap here is going to be much smaller than it was before.
Right.
But again, like you said, so, this depression here that ALMP likes to park there for their transformers, then unfortunately that has to stay. And then you don't hit another railing until you start going down the steps.
Yeah, and then that sidewalk that continues there next to the Spam building, I guess that's a heated sidewalk. Is that how come it's always clear snow?
It usually is.
Yeah.
Or it used to be. It no longer works anymore. But the reason it's clear is because the state of Alaska pays to have it cleared. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I figured that the sidewalk, there are pretty conscious of the capital. Trying to keep that gravelled and salted and clear enough, because we just don't want the governor's staff to fall on that sidewalk and say, let's move to Willow.
I think it goes deeper than that. Anytime you own a business and the SOB being its own business, any travel up here, an employee falling on their way to work is just another work site accident. So, it is downtown Juneau. Thank goodness we don't live in Seattle, where the grades on 3rd Street are 16%, but in Seattle, some of the streets that we do there, can exceed almost 30%. So it isn't, it's one of the issues that Juneau has, being on the side of a mountain. We do have some good sized hills, and we're here to help that out any way we can. And sometimes that's just hard to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just thought I'd mention that, and yeah, thank you.
I'll absolutely look into it and see if I can come up with any solutions.
Okie doke.
Thank you, sir.
Shosh has another question.
Justin, maybe I missed it, but did you address the phasing and what you'll be able to do as far as parking during the construction?
Yeah, I did address it, but that's okay. I don't mind. So I'm corresponding with the Legislative Affairs Office to see if we can offer some parking, and I'm not familiar with how much the Legislative Affairs parking lot is used in the summertime. Do you know if it's full all year round, or is it just during session?
I think Roald can answer that better than I can. My impression is it's not used all year round, but there's
It
often special
definitely
sessions.
it definitely empties out when they leave.
So, before the design's done, then I'm going to at least ask and see whether parking for residents will, if that's going to be a possibility or not. The only other close parking would be the parking garage, and I don't know how the city feels about allowing parking in the parking garage for residents. That would be something that I would have to discuss with them, and we're going to have to come up with a parking solution.
If I could just ask,
Yeah, go
this is
ahead, John.
John. Does everybody usually just park on the side of the street?
Yeah, it's usually right here. There's up on the upper side, this area. Oh, I'm sorry. It starts about here actually. And parking goes along here until the road gets too thin to have.
Okay. We may be able to find
and
an
there
option.
then there's a couple parking spots
Right.
here.
We may be able to find an option very temporarily. But that's something I'll have to look into, or we can look into, Justin.
Yeah.
And see if we can get something done, because
I'm really hoping that the Legislative Affairs Office would allow us to temporarily park there.
Yeah,
Just
I'm
during
just saying
construction, but
that
if not, then we can look for something different. Sorry, go
the
ahead.
on-street parking is going to be very, very difficult when you have this ripped up. So it's something we can definitely look into, though. So.
Okay, and then did you already address whether during the construction project would a cab or a ambulance or would any vehicle be able to make it up 3rd and Dixon?
Well, it'll be broken into two phases. So as you can see on this sheet, this is phase one. And this is phase two. So during phase one, then Dixon will be open and clear and will be able to be used coming from the parking garage. When West 3rd Street phase is done and Dixon is started, then this West 3rd will be able to be used at all times. So they will need to complete one side and get it close enough to completed that it'll be drivable. And a fire truck or an ambulance would be able to get as close as Legislative Affairs parking lot. And during a lot of the time would be able to. Now, if there was an emergency right in the middle of them digging a water trench down the middle of the street, then that might be harder. But I don't know a contractor out there that isn't going to do everything they can to
The
make sure that.
According to the specifications, the contractor is mandated that all emergency vehicles must have access of some kind. So it's up to them to have a contingency plan to make sure that everything is open at all times, or at least a plan to have it open.
Right, and a lot of those are, taken care of by steel sheets that can be taken and put over a trench line. So, it may not be smooth because they just aren't ready for it, but it will. A contractor will do whatever they can to allow emergency access and is required to.
Okay, thank you for that. And then did you already say the dates of the project? It's 90 days from April for 90 days?
No, I
correct?
didn't. No, I did not say that.
Mm.
I think John touched upon the dates a little bit. I don't remember exactly what John said.
Currently, we really haven't talked about that. What we usually like to do is we like to set a completion date for the final end of the completion of the project, usually around September. But we also give the contractor, once they do begin, we give them a certain amount of time to get it done. So they're not there all summer long and not doing anything. So usually it's, we give them a little bit of leeway. So it could start as early as April. It could start as late as July. We just don't know yet.
But this particular job will not start early summer because there's just no way that they could get the supplies here in time to make
Exactly.
that happen. So if I was a guessing person, then I would guess that a start in July would be about the soonest we would see this.
So Justin, there's a question from John Ingalls in the
Yeah.
question and answer. He's asking, Telephone Hill is one of the oldest, if not the oldest neighborhood in Juneau. It is visited by many tourists as they walk around town. Will the
Mhm.
project be sensitive and keep the historical nature of the hill?
Well, I don't. The look of the hill is not going to change, in my opinion. Will tourists be able to access Telephone Hill at all times? And I'm not sure that that's going to be possible. There'll be local traffic, but to mix a bunch of excavators and construction with tourists, I'm not so sure is the best plan. I know that when it's completed, we're not going to see a big look difference. And during that time where they're working on phase 2, then that would be the time that I would be there will be a sign posted down at the parking garage saying through local traffic only. So during that period that they're working on phase 2, then residents will be allowed up, but general sightseers will not be.
Bob, oh, I'm sorry. Roald Simonson has another question, and then John Ingalls has a question.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I accidentally hit that, but I did have another question.
Perfect timing then.
I was just touching that, but actually, I just want to go back to something. I just had an idea, and you probably have this idea. You're a city engineer or whatever, you know about these things, billions of things. But that sort of thing around the corner that I'm talking about, I was saying, you know, what about a kind of suspended, graded, you know, walkway type deal, you know, like they have on 6th Street on Star Hill, you know, something like that. Maybe that sort of structure.
Do you know what he's talking about, John?
Are you talking about the curve there on the SOB side?
Yeah.
Going up and around?
He's basically talking about this area here that is
Yeah, right. Right.
treacherous, or basically both sides are treacherous.
And crossing from the, you know, the parking lot side of that corner there to
Like
cross
here.
the street to get that, yeah, to get into that just crossing third there is perilous.
There has been no talk of that. That's about as good an answer as I can give you right now.
Yeah.
So
I can look into it though.
yeah, absolutely. And
But it's Justin, it sounds like you know very well what I'm talking about. So
I
you've
do.
experienced it. Yeah.
I've slipped and fallen with you.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, it's a steep hill. If there is something that we can do that's not, we have to, I mean, there's only so much budget in this project. So of course we do have budget constraints like everything else. So,
Yep.
But like we said, I will take a peek and see if there's anything we can be done there. You know, even possibly, anyways, I won't go into much detail, but I do have a couple ideas since we've talked about it. So let me just see what I can work on and accomplish, and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, fine.
John Ingalls, if you have your question.
Are you there, John?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I just kind of want to remind you that what you're dealing with is the oldest and probably the most interesting neighborhood in Juneau. And I think it's really tragic to take this neighborhood, which historically it's kind of perfect. It's a poster child for life before setbacks and zoning and how people lived. And you're taking this and you're pouring all kinds of concrete, you're putting in sidewalks, which I have a feeling they may never be used, the sidewalks, because people are in the habit of just walking down the street there, and it seems to work just fine. I don't see any reason to pour all that, maybe 6 feet a wide strip of asphalt that people, people go on that hill when they want to relax and have a nice quiet walk, and you're putting all this in a sort of semi-natural setting. And
If I could just interrupt you for just 1 second. There's no new sidewalk going in. The sidewalk starts here on the corner and then goes down 3rd Street. But as we move down Dixon, there's no sidewalk that's being added. There's a small collection system for the water. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's only 2 2 feet wide at its largest point.
I
So-
thought the sidewalk was gonna be on both sides of the street.
No, there's no sidewalk. I mean, there's sidewalk up here on West Third Street like there is now,
Uh-huh.
but that sidewalk does not continue up on that side of the street,
Uh-huh.
nor does it go over here.
Uh-huh.
There's a park here that's existing. We're not going to touch that. Nor are we going to touch anything here. There's a new ramp being put here just because the old one's falling apart. And so there's new concrete going here to allow for a handicap ramp. But besides that, then there's not sidewalk on either side of the street that doesn't already have sidewalk. So I
And
don't know.
have you
I don't know if
ad-
that's,
have you
I don't know if that's
addressed,
helpful.
Sorry, have you addressed the access then to the second house on Dixon? I think it's still considered, what is that? Maureen, Tony, what's your address? That second house on the left.
Second house on the
And
uphill side or the
yes.
downhill side?
On
Telephone building.
the old phone company.
Which is which one? I'm sorry.
It's so if you come out of the state lot and then there's a gray house right on the sidewalk, and then you take the sidewalk or the boardwalk to the next house. Yep,
Right there.
You're
That's
talking
the
about
old-
here,
That's the oldest house in Juneau, by the way. I want to remind you.
the 135.
yes. And so what's the access then? I mean, are you gonna have graded walkway still, or?
I think the current walkway is wood slats, correct?
Some of it is and some of it's great.
Okay, so we won't be touching this area.
Okay.
We won't be, if I know we need to put a water line in here, otherwise this house won't have water. But besides that, then this section here will just be put back as is. If it needs to be touched, which it may not.
And paralleling Dixon, what happens there? It's kind of
Parallel.
suspended above the street and above the parking.
Are you talking about this area?
Yes.
Okay, so that was what we discussed for about a half an hour on the, let's turn to that page. Okay, so this is looking down the ramp. So this is all filled in underneath, and there is a concrete wall here.
Okay.
And this is a ramp that, as you can see, is fairly straight. And then these lines here are the roadway. So
So,
it's a real easy entrance and making it handicap accessible, which all ramps are required by federal law right now.
right. And does that mean, so then that becomes a concrete embankment down? So that's what the cars will park up against?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun in the winter. Yeah.
I mean, it's basically no different than the wood that's there now.
But you're bumping into wood if you bump into something, you're not bumping into concrete.
True. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of a nightmare parking beyond those first two spaces on the street. As the street slopes, the rest of those spaces become almost inaccessible in the winter.
yeah. Same on my street too.
Yeah,
I think probably on almost everyone's street.
well, it's pretty steep. It's a pretty good grade, I would say.
Yeah, let's see. The grade on that side of the street.
Well, it's on that portion of the street.
Yeah, so 10, 11% for sure.
Yeah.
I think Roald had a very good point. If you're crossing that street and you fall down, then you've got the traffic coming down on top of you. It's very scary. Yeah, West Third.
It is. I'm not making it any worse than it is to begin with. I just, I said, I definitely will look in to see if I can do something that would make it safer.
Isn't there some sort of like rubber bumpers or something that they sometimes put along those kind of places so you bump into something else besides concrete?
So we're talking about two different things here right now.
Oh, sorry.
So I have
Maybe.
one person talking about the corner, and then
No.
are you talking about the concrete wall again?
Yeah, I'm thinking
Okay.
about the people who have to park alongside, parallel park along that wall in the winter when there's ice.
Rubber bumpers would be great.
I don't know. I've seen something like that somewhere, but I'm not sure where.
Well, let me look. I'll look into that as well. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm just writing.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
The other question I have too is in
Mhm.
terms of historical nature is like any hydrants or anything like that. I don't know. Are you leaving the existing light poles?
The lights poles are owned by ALP,
Okay, so they'll
And-
stay.
so
And the hydrants?
the hydrant's owned by the water department, and that will be upgraded to a new
And
fire
so
hydrant.
will they make them look kind of like they do in the historical district where they're, not too modern looking?
No, the water department has just a normal water hydrant that they have parts for and can quickly replace it if it needs be. So they use the same fire hydrant. And I don't think it's any different than the fire hydrant that you have now. I think the look of
Okay.
it, I mean, it might be a little newer paint, but that's going to be about it.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Roll, did you have another question?
Sorry, no, I just keep touching the wrong thing. Sorry.
Tony Tank, you had a question. You may need to unmute, Tony.
There's the unmute button. I see it. I'm getting used to the unmute button. Anyway, I appreciate Rachel's concern about the bumpers along the cement wall. But one thing that I was excited about earlier was when you mentioned that street would be 2 feet, at least 2 feet wider, and in some places 3 feet wider, which would take care of a lot of that concern that we have about being so close to the wall. It would give us more room to park. And in the summertime, actually more room for people to walk down the middle of the street.
The bumpers would take away part of that. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That the bumpers would, but there may not be as big a need for bumpers if there is that extra room to park off the main road. Actually, extra 2 to 3 feet of play.
It's still parallel parking.
Yeah. I think that we can probably all have different opinions on that for sure. I think that obviously I'm trying to give you as much room as I can. It's not a normal street, and it sounds like everyone, likes that about the street. So there's a few things that we have to accomplish, and obviously nobody wants their water line to go down or us for not to fix failing infrastructure. It's like the importance of a fire hydrant and those things that we just need. But our basic concept has always been that we're gonna try to put it back as best we can to the same. And and improve a few things that just need a little extra attention.
Am I on? It's
Yes.
John Ingalls.
Yes, John, you are.
I just want to remind you that I put a lot of my own personal money and time into planting trees up there. And I really don't like your attitude about, well, this tree is a little off balance, let's get rid of it. I mean, it's extremely windy up there. And the savior is the trees. And so I've been living up there for about, 40 years now. And as the trees have grown up, it's been much more tolerable being up there because the winds are a little bit protected. And
Right.
I just,
And the only trees that I'm touching are the ones that are overhanging into the street. That's just going to affect the emergency vehicles just by city code. You
and
need-
which ones, and where are those exactly, those trees? I'm sorry.
you know, we have some trees on 3rd Street that as you go up, overhang over the street.
You mean on the
Um,
corner there?
No, just on the main stretch of 3rd Street.
Oh,
So-
the alders?
You mean
those-
that are in the slope there?
Yeah,
They're-
yes, that's what I was talking about. I said
and what-
99.9% of the trees that we're talking about are just alders that have just gone to and grown too much.
Well, they could probably be trimmed. I mean, why, this is
And
not
will be.
They could be carefully trimmed and maintained, but I don't see any reason to just rip them
See,
out.
see, my note here 8 says remove overhanging branches as directed by the engineer.
Okay, but that's all right, but
I'm still on this expansion, even 2 or 3 feet along along Dixon. Where does that 2 or 3 feet come out of?
Just the sloughing ground that's right now just keeps coming down here underneath
You're gonna
that ramp.
set back then the existing, because right now the existing boardwalk abuts, it like goes straight up to the street. There is an, understory there, like, or whatever you'd call that, but the sidewalk just overhangs the street, so you must be moving that sidewalk back. Is that
It's
correct?
just, it's approximately in the same location.
Because there's a retaining wall on the,
Yeah, you can
on
see
the
it. You can see
inside
it
of
right here.
that. Yeah, that's on the inside of that sidewalk.
Right. And that still will be there. That won't be touched. You can see the retaining wall in the detail.
So
here.
you're not replacing that retaining wall?
No.
Okay,
The retaining wall stays here. This will be graded here into the sidewalk. And that's it.
alright.
Just making it so that there's access and that there's a ramp that someone could use to get to and fro in a wheelchair.
Right.
So Maureen has a question. Go ahead, Maureen. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, I finally figured this out.
Yay.
Took me about an hour and a half. Yeah, well, number one, I do appreciate the work that you've been doing on this. I know I've talked to you out in the street when you've been
Mhm.
walking up and down and back and forth. And I'm sure, I know that the city somewhere has the old water lines, because I remember seeing one of the workers, and this is about 8 years ago or so, they thought they didn't, and then this woman who was on the crew at that point found it and brought it. So I think somewhere there is that document. The other thing is, I'm wondering if one of the things that John mentioned, and he did put his own time, energy, and money into the railing along the along that ramp that you're talking about now.
Mhm.
And granted, it's gone the way of the wood, but I'm wondering if it is possible to make that railing a little more attractive. I mean, given the historical nature, the neat thing about the way that railing was before it, before it, you know, decomposed, is, I mean, it had historical pieces in it about the hill. And is there any kind of money, any kind of 1% for the art or
Well,
whatever?
let me just stop you here for just one second,
Okay.
so I can address a couple questions at a time. So the railing currently, as it stands, would be deemed unsafe
Right.
for it. It does not have enough protection for fall protection for children or anyone that were to take it, and it currently resides on CBJ property. So CBJ has a responsibility to design it so that it does not cause them the possibility of a lawsuit in the future. So that's the reason why you're seeing a railing that is closer together, and a railing that has specific heights and materials and so on and so forth. That, of course, would be up to the city if they wanted to make it so that it didn't protect them from those things. But I, as an engineer, would have to assume that they would until I was directed otherwise. I mean, I understand that the railing was put in with some blood, sweat, and tears from the residents that are up there, and does mean something. You know, that railing could be set aside and given to you, and you can put in a different location, or you know, there's other things we can do. Unfortunately, you know, if we were, the second that we touch it, then we have to bring it up to 2022 standards. And unfortunately, you know, the things that we're seeing on this paper are just those standards that are having to be, you know, I mean, not all of us like it, but regulations are put in place, and unfortunately, I'm required to follow it.
Well, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy with the idea that it'll be safer. And I was just wondering, given the regulations, because of course I understand what, you know, the code stuff, and that this was put in, whatever. But if there'd be some way of working with those regulations, but maybe making it, is it all made out? I can't read any of the little, any of
Okay,
the,
no problem.
is it all metal? Is it wood? Is it,
It's metal.
is there some way of, it's metal, huh?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And is that the way all of them are in the community?
No, I mean, I've seen wood railings before.
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
just happens that it's just not going to last as long, right? So,
Well,
and right now the price of wood is probably more expensive than metal, but I think that, I mean, it's a tough road, right? So you put in concrete and you put in metal, then it'll be there and they won't have to redo it again in 20 years. Or you spend more or the same amount in wood, and then you just run into some possible issues before the road needs to be redone again. So, you know, I mean, it's something that we can discuss. And I'll write it down. But
thank you.
I'm not coming up with any immediate solutions.
And that's fine, as long as it's something that's not written in cement right at this point. Maybe we can find, maybe we can see if there is some other possible, more attractive solution. but maybe not.
I'm with you.
Okay, thanks.
Tell
Thank
me,
you.
remind me too about, I wrote down water services. What was your question on that?
No, it wasn't a question. It was, you were asking if anybody had any information.
Oh,
And,
yeah, right.
And I know somewhere, but
Yeah,
I don't work for the city, so I have no.
and neither
idea
do
where-
I.
Yeah. Maybe-
But I can tell
maybe
you that
that's-
I've spent 100 hours looking for it.
Oh, okay.
So I've been in the Alaska State Archives. I've been with previous state of Alaska maintenance supervisors. I've been with CBJ Water 6 times, digging through old files, napkins, anything that looked remotely close to it. And as an engineer, I'm not exactly super cheap. So at 100 hours, I'm feeling, I wish I could find more. I tried really hard. I
And
just wasn't
okay.
able to find whatever it was that you found before.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just wish that woman was still working there. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Tony Tangs has another question. Tony, you're muted.
I think I must have done rolled and accidentally clicked on that. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
No
problem.
So anyway, I'm lowering my hand.
Shosh, did you have another question?
I do. Something that Justin, you said before was that that oftentimes when this kind of work gets done, then that's the time or the moment where individuals find upgrades for the properties where they're living in. So when you said that, I just kind of I heard that and it made me a little nervous. So just from your expertise, what kind of percentage are we looking at? Like with these old homes, what's the probability that we'll have to involve the state or whatever or whoever and worry about our own plumbing?
Oh, I mean, I don't know what your own internal plumbing condition is. It, we won't be touching it. So, if you're, I guess the reason that I had mentioned that is it is often advantageous to the homeowner to get it done at the same time. So like if you had you had a specific issue and you were a homeowner, then often when the contractor is there, then people do hire them privately, but just not paid by the city. So that's all I was saying there. Is while they're there, it is often easier to get something done. And in most, like the easiest example is when they're paving the road and you want your driveway done, then often people call the paving company to come and also do their driveway. In this particular case, if you owned a home and you knew your water line was going bad and you wanted the whole thing done to the house, then someone would ask the contractor for a price to do that. I just finished on Hospital Drive. Juneau Bone and Joint had an issue with their service, and they had the contractor come back at a different time and replace their water line. So I'm not sure that, I mean, this is an old street. I've seen some fixes of water and sewer up there. It looks to me that the water and sewer line is in pretty rough shape. It also looks really shallow. So I think that and in an email I sent to the state just today, I did recommend that they replace their service lines on the private property. So
We'll see.
I'm not sure what a percentage would be, but I do know that this is old infrastructure, and unfortunately, it does not last forever.
Okay, John Ingalls, you have a question?
I don't think so.
Well, excellent. Did we work through all of our questions? I sent out flyers. Hopefully that got to everybody. I have my email and my phone number on there, I believe. If not, I believe it was on there. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, send me an email, give me a call. I can give you updates, or if you have a question that you want to dive in further, or you want to, or you don't think of, while you were on here that you want to ask later, don't hesitate. I'm here to answer any questions and do whatever I can to, within my power, to appease all the powers to be.
Well said.
It is true. I mean, I'm working for you, I mean, that's what I'm here for. Just trying to make it safe and make it so that the water line doesn't break in the middle of the night and it's out for a week. We're just trying to replace it before that happens.
So if there are no further questions, John Nelson, do you want to close out, give people your email address and such to get in contact with?
Like Justin said, I appreciate everybody joining us tonight, and I really appreciate all the questions, and we will definitely address them as best as we can. Again, like Justin said too, our contact information was on that handout. So if you have any more questions or want to get a hold of us, please don't hesitate, and we'll be happy to get back to you. So I just appreciate it again. Thank you. I hope you have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. We appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, please be sure to get a hold of Justin or John. Their phone numbers. John Nelson's phone number is available within the city directory for engineering, and Justin Canoose works with Dell Engineering. Thanks.
Thank
Thank you both.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Talk to some of you soon.
Thanks a
Okay,
lot.
thanks, Justin.